Okay. So welcome folks to a presentation on thinking about Freemasonry and the in and out of the lodge. This is something that has been deep in my own heart and something that has recently come to a new knowledge through some training that I've taken, and I would like to share with you some of the things that have led me to begin to think of things in a different manner. So how's this for an identity crisis? Who do we think we are? A fraternity? A brotherhood of men under the fatherhood of God? An outer porch to the inner temple? A system of morality veiled in allegory, illustrated by symbols? A place to make good men better? A platform from which to launch esoteric studies? A fundraiser for charities? Or maybe simply a place for green beans to be shared during spaghetti breakfasts? Yes, yes, I tell you, yes. We are all that and more. What we think of the fraternity becomes what the fraternity is and will be in the future. Yes, I borrowed a lot of memes for this presentation. It is what it is. We don't actually make good men better. Seriously. We give them tools and we explain that they must do it for themselves. And I believe that this is a critical point we sometimes miss explaining to all new Masons. This meme was stolen shamelessly from one of my favorite Masons, Brother Juan Sepulveda. Thank you, Brother Juan, for all you do. We have to teach new Masons to think for themselves. Well, we also have to learn it for ourselves, and then those lessons never end. I propose a simple way of doing this is quietly reflecting on a piece of ritual, a symbol, or a working tool. This is the lesson taught through the Masonic Legacy Society and something I want to share this evening. Well, there we go. If Masonic education is so popular and we aren't teaching the new brothers sufficiently, what's the missing link? I propose that it's getting people to simply stop and think about Freemasonry. We're given beautiful lessons in allegory, and we might find that the personal meaning of those symbols and teachings is deeper than imagined. There's no reason to think we all have to sit for hours in deep trance meditation to begin to explore this wonder. We aren't going to spend hours locked away in the Shaolin Temple with David Carradine and Jackie Chan. We can and should take small steps as we are taught in our ritual, one step at a time. Every one of us began with one step. Remember? What? So we have to meditate? Let's not get too carried away here. Instead of attempting long, deep meditation sessions, I'm proposing we simply sit and think for a minute here, 5 minutes there, with a chance to relax and think. I'm saying we can take a break from the world for a few minutes, take a few deep breaths, and find ourselves. This refreshing break comes with a massive bonus. We get to think about how Freemasonry works or maybe fits into our lives. Then we get to consider how we use and benefit from the lessons and tools. But books, what about books? We're told to go read books. They'll teach us everything. Well, they teach us everything except the experiential part about how good it feels to take the break and actually just sit and relax. The books can't teach us what it feels like. Okay, books are good too. You cannot go wrong with reading Contemplative Masonry by Brother Chuck Dunning. Brother Chuck lays out what I'm saying here in much better depth and better ties this with your own Masonic experience. This book was a game changer for me. Certainly just as important to me and this presentation are the documents and ideas found on the Masonic Legacy Society page. This is all about putting thought into existing Freemasonry without any dues, without any separate meetings, just a way to look more deeply into all aspects of your current Blue Lodge, what you're doing in the basics. It's all about how you relate to and think about your Blue Lodge experience, because there's so much there and many times just taken for granted. We will get to the books. We will. I'm actually going to read this slide for emphasis, not something that I normally do. But let's consider how we think about Freemasonry, or how we might focus on Freemasonry. Ritual tells us we are the temple ourselves. It tells us about the lodge of brothers around us. Ritual also teaches us to be mindful of our interactions with the rest of the world as we quit this sacred retreat of a lodge. So what? Ritual's telling us we have three lodges to think about: the internal, the external, which is a brother sitting around you, and the universal lodge, which is your family, your community, your church, your place in society. So we can look at any piece of ritual or symbol or working tool as affecting us in three ways simultaneously: internal, external, and universal. How might we think about Freemasonry? Let's look at transforming self, service, engaging freedom. What is the free? Our obligation and its penalties. Silence. You know that some Masonic jurisdictions, the entered apprentices cannot speak in lodge for a year? Silence is a very important part of our practice. The mystic tie and how that fits with interconnectedness with deity and each other in the lodge. And what is it all about with harmony and balance? You know, what is it there? Ritual also tells us there's different ways to approach Freemasonry. We're told to think about it. We're told it is a part of the world and worlds around us. We are told we are to circumscribe our passions or emotions. We're also told we are to maintain our spirituality and morality in all things. So we have the intellectual, the physical, the emotional, and the spiritual. Well, we also have the internal, the external, the universal. Wait, how am I going to keep up with all of that? Well, it's easy peasy. Boom. We only think about one thing at a time. Let's pick on an experience of your very first step into the lodge out of the preparation room. Why? Well, because it's my presentation and I'll schedule you next for this and you can pick on what you want. But we can literally pick any symbol, any working tool, any lodge officer station, any piece of furniture, any footwork or floor work, any ritual word or phrase. It doesn't matter. We pick anything about the Blue Lodge. And I suggest we pick on everything, but let's do one thing at a time and make it easy. I suggest we focus on entered apprentice, but any of the degrees are fair game. Back to the subject at hand. What happened after you were commanded to enter? What feelings did you have? What senses could you experience? Remember, you are a lodge. It says so in ritual. You are building that internal edifice by smoothing the ashlar and in communion with the great architect. We're going to open an internal lodge here. We're going to do it by these simple steps, something you've seen before. So let's quickly open our internal lodge. If you're driving or operating any machinery while listening to this, stop. Do not continue listening to this at a later time. Do not operate any machinery or drive during this exercise. Why? Because we're about to begin the process of stilling ourselves, relaxing, breathing peacefully, and sitting quietly. My Kung Fu teachers used to call this emptiness, stillness, sinking, and softness, because you went through those four in that order. So let's please take a position in which you can be comfortable, move around in your chair. Without moving for the next several minutes is the key. Unless you practice some sort of meditation posture on the floor, it's recommended that you have your feet on the floor. Do not cross your legs. Likewise, you may place your hands in any position you wish, and it's comfortable for most people to simply rest them on their thighs. You're welcome to close your eyes now, but if you prefer not to do so, then you may simply allow them to gaze at some particular point in front of you, open or closed. And you can do this in any manner you like. I'll walk you through how I practice this, and you'll see that the steps are quick and simple, and you can use this on your own. So let's begin to relax and become more centered by feeling the Earth's gravity pulling down on your body. Feel with me now the gravity pulling on your feet against the floor. Feel the bones in your feet becoming heavy. And let those bones just sink through the flesh. And feel it pulling down through your feet and through your legs. And feel the gravity pulling you into your seat and your leg bones becoming heavy. And you might notice some unnecessary tension in the muscles. Tension you don't need to keep you in sitting in a healthy posture. If so, release that tension and allow gravity to pull you into a deeper state of calm, peaceful relaxation. Feel the gravity pulling through the muscles in your belly and lower back, down into the bones that you sit on and into your chair. You might notice some unnecessary tension in those muscles, tension you don't need to keep you sitting in a healthy posture. If so, release that tension and allow gravity to pull you into a deeper state of calm, peaceful relaxation. Feel the gravity pulling down through the muscles in your chest and your upper back and shoulders. You might notice some unnecessary tension in those muscles, tension you don't need to keep you sitting in a healthy posture. If so, release that tension and allow gravity to pull you into a deeper state of calm, peaceful relaxation. Let's feel the gravity pulling down through the muscles in our upper arms, our forearms, and hands. And feel the bones of your arms and forearms and hands becoming heavy. You might notice some unnecessary tension in those muscles, tension you don't need to keep you sitting in a slow, in a healthy posture. If so, release that tension. Allow gravity to pull you into a deeper state of calm, peaceful relaxation. Now turn your attention to your breath, flowing in and out of its own peaceful, natural rhythm. Simply allow your body to breathe without directing it in any way. And with each breath, you can feel yourself becoming more relaxed and centered. You can increase your focus on the breath by mentally repeating the words in as you inhale and out as you exhale. With each breath, you can find yourself becoming more relaxed and centered. In, out, in, out. In, out. And I want you to think in and out as you go. Now let go of the words and the focus on your breath to simply notice the quieter space within. In this sanctum sanctorum within the internal lodge of your own being, you are now welcome to silently invoke the aid of deity in whatever way is meaningful to you. I will be quiet and let you pray. Attend to the following words of scripture from the Entered Apprentice ritual. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. Imagine yourself as that deep, dark void. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Imagine that divine light shining down from the heavens into you. Try to see and feel its rays penetrating the top of your head and radiating down through your brain and neck into your heart. Take a moment to more fully experience your communion with the light. Recall your first step into the lodge for your own entered apprentice degree. Simply hold it in the center of your attention in the sacred space within. Thoughts and feelings may arise about it, but let them go and gently redirect yourself to quietly and peacefully hold the focus on your first step into the lodge for your own entered apprentice degree. You might also become momentarily distracted by some sense, perception, or lose focus for some other reason. In any case, it is good practice to gently redirect yourself to quietly and peacefully hold the focus on your first step into the lodge for your own entered apprentice degree. I will be silent for a while so that you can sink more deeply into quiet and peaceful focus on your first step into the lodge for your own entered apprentice degree. Now, Recall your body sitting here in your room. Feel the temperature of the air. Hear what you hear. Smell what you smell. Taste what you taste. And when you are ready, open your eyes to see what you see. And feel free at this time to stretch and move about. The connectedness with your feet to the ground. The muscles moving slowly. Nice. Always amazes me when I come out of a meditative practice that my breathing, I've already forgotten about my breathing again. Let's go ahead and begin to actively speculate on our first step into the lodge for your own entered apprentice degree. You're welcome to make notes as you freely consider the possibilities or questions that come to mind, analyzing, connecting, structuring them in whatever way seems fitting. As you do so, also consider these 5 questions. What meaningful application does this aspect of ritual have? How can you apply that? How did it apply? Or what meaning did it have when I first became a Freemason? My first step. How does it apply, or what meaning does it have as I look into my next stages of life? What am I doing next with it? What inner guidance am I receiving now? You know, what is being asked of me in my continued learning as a Freemason from looking at my first step into the lodge? And how can I bring the key elements of this Masonic education into the greater community? How can I take what I feel and what happened with my first step into Freemasonry? How do I apply that to the inner lodge, the external lodge, and the universal lodge of the community? Some of those questions are easier answered than others, but thinking about that, what meaningful application can you put from, can you explore from your first step into a lodge and the experience of that? I'm going to give everybody a little bit of time to collect your thoughts. If you have something to write on and write that down, that'd be great. If not, don't worry about it. Just think about it. What did that mean to you? How can you apply it? We'll join together in a bit of dialogue about the experience, insights, and questions. And I fully expect that this is the topic du jour, right, for the rest of the presentation. Maybe look at this. What does it mean to me now? How can I improve any areas or focus as I bring new entered apprentices myself to light? When I now do the ritual for others, what did that mean to me when I went through it? I picked on Brother Mike Jarzabek earlier and asked him if he might consider going first, because I wanted to, give everybody a chance to understand that this isn't a deep probe or something that we're trying to interrogate people with. This is more of, what does it mean to you, and how can you make it yours, and how can you expand on it? So, Brother Mike, if I might, what did you feel, and what did you take away from this?
Thank you. So I thought of the way that we were prepared, that it's kind of like a tentative kind of step, right? Because of the fact that of where your senses are. So I thought of that being that first step, not knowing where the next footing, where your foot was going to land. Not knowing what was in front of you, not really knowing the direction that you were going into, and how when we challenge ourselves to get outside of our comfort zones, that we're kind of in that same condition. And I was also kind of inspired by the fact that we begin that journey with a guide. And however we feel that most journeys that we have a guide, whether it's a guide and a friend, or whether we feel that's our subconscious or God or whatever we think, that we had to trust that guide, trust that conductor, and that, we need to learn to trust that, at least that inner voice within ourselves, when we're making those first steps into something new.
Very cool. Do you, the change from tentative to trusting to listening is kind of an interesting journey. Is there something, could I bug you to expand on that a touch? Is that something that you would be interested in?
Yeah, in what way?
It appears to me that what you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the first steps into a lodge of entered apprentice was tentative, and then it changed to a trusting, or that there was some trust there, and then later on it was found to be guided, and you trusted your guide. Was there something? Did I miss something, or was that a thread that made more sense there?
I think me personally, lately in life, where I'm at, I've been learning to trust my intuition a lot more. It's not something that comes easy to us. I think sometimes we don't want to trust it. We want to think that we're just deceiving ourselves. But I found lately that maybe I should trust it a lot more, because it's been helpful to me in a lot of ways. On when to take the first step, on when to take the first step out of something, as well as when to stop doing something. But learning to trust that intuition, instead of looking for everything outside, to spin a phrase like in the profane world, to trust that inner sense, more than outside stimulus.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'm sorry?
You're welcome.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to share with the group?
Yeah, Randy, this is Joe. Just to latch onto what Mike brought up, the whole census part of it, at least when I was contemplating it, and apologies, my children are fighting in the background. The whole, when talking about your senses, when there's certain parts of the ritual where you're bereft of certain senses, a lot of your other senses, at least when I was thinking about it during the meditation, a lot of your other senses become hyperstimulated. Your sense of touch, or maybe your sense of hearing, and without getting into too much detail. Certain things are taken away from you, but then you compensate with others, and you get that sense during those contemplative exercises when you're meditating and the like, because you're purposefully hyper focusing on certain things. So that kind of does take you back there a little bit, to that point in your life. So at least for me, that's what I think about when I contemplate on that part.
Cool.
You know, Randy, if I can jump in, I'd like to latch on to kind of what Joe was just talking about, because I absolutely agree that that was exactly the same sense. And frankly, what Mike was talking about too, when you take those first tentative steps, right? But the biggest thing is, because of being bereft of certain things, that the other senses, and in particular for me, it was about the listening, straining to hear what else is happening, straining to hear, not wanting to miss anything that was said, the importance of anything that was said. And then tying that back to contemplative meditation or contemplative masonry, and tying that back to silence, right? And you referred to, some Grand Lodges requiring a year, of entered apprentices not speaking and being silent. And, it's really fascinating. That topic has come up a lot for me over the last 2 months. And it's fascinating, because when you are meditating, you're not talking. When you're meditating, you're focused inwardly, and you are practicing that silence. You are practicing, the inner assessment of what's going on inside of you and inside of your heart, and the things that are that you are being reminded of, that where your ashlar is still rough, or where your intuition may be reminding you or taking you in a new direction. So I think all of those pieces tie really strongly back to that silence piece for me, and and how to meditate, and that is the first step in meditation.
Very cool. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll pitch in if you don't mind.
Please, Ryan.
You had asked and reiterated a couple times about what that first step was like, that first step through the door. And all I could think about was like how nervous and scared I was, and you don't really know what's going to happen. I didn't do any research ahead of time about what Freemasonry was, or I didn't want to spoil anything. And when I reflect on it now, I think back to it being like a leap of faith. Like in Indiana Jones, when he steps off the edge and he's, faithful that bridge is going to be there, that he's not going to fall into the chasm. And that's a very profound feeling. And kind of going back to what Mike said, I appreciate that you go through that with someone else holding your hand. That they guide you through it. They say, trust me, it'll be okay. And I've been a senior deacon, and that's one of my favorite chairs. And I go back to it all the time, because that's a profound gift to give to someone, to say, have this trust, that we will be there for you, and, be there for you in that leap of faith is a pretty cool gift to give to someone.
Nice. Absolutely. Thank you. We've shared a lot, and I'm going to open it up. Anybody else like to share some experience here? Okay. So how can we bring these key elements of this education, right? The concepts, the feelings that we've experienced into Freemasonry and move it to the next level, right? Where we've seen it before, we've now experienced it, we've shared what that means to us. How can I apply that tomorrow? What lessons does that give? Just thinking about how that fits and what you experienced. How does that help the community around us? How does that help your own contemplative studies tomorrow? Anybody like to share with that?
So, I mean, I think, Randy, that taking that level of trust and taking that feeling and knowing that it turned out okay, and honestly, as far as I'm concerned, with the path that I've taken, which is nothing near, I didn't even know half of this stuff existed, and what would be open to me. Here I am, I'm an electrician, and I end up taking a job in Freemasonry that was done by Paul Revere. Like, whoever thought that would happen? I mean, it's not something that I'm arrogant about it, but it's something amazing to me that, like, there's 80 people in history that have filled that job, and he's one of them, and that somebody of my background could still do the same thing. And I didn't know that those things and the preparation for me to be able to take a job like that and to be able to fill those shoes, that I could do that I could take that one step was one step in in that whole chain, but it was important, because I never would have known that was available to me if I didn't take that first step.
That's very, very cool, very insightful. What anybody else would like to share?
When you're talking about practical application,
Yeah.
I know that we learn a lot through about ourselves through meditation, but I every now and then find that someone teaches me a lot about myself. And someone told me the other day that I was a teach a man to fish kind of guy, quote unquote. And I had to step back and kind of think about that. And I thought that was a cool thing to say. And that's part of when I said, being a senior deacon and guiding someone through. That's kind of what I'm talking about. I would love, I'm also a tradesman, and I love to teach people how to hang drywall or how to frame a wall, because if I teach them how to do it, they can carry that throughout their lives. And as I get that from helping people in lodge and assisting them and inviting that confidence in them that you can do this, you can handle this. Mike once told me in a conversation that Freemasonry is one of the only organizations that lets rookies run it. We give someone a lodge and they become master, and they probably are not ready for being master, but they make it through. And we have some guys that do some amazing things in their year, and that's a cool thing to be part of.
Thank you for sharing that. So the object of this presentation was to think about Freemasonry, to think about Freemasonry. What I've presented is one way of looking at how to do so, only one. I've taken the basic blueprint or recipe, if you will, of the Masonic Legacy Society. I modified it to my own approach. How can we become deeper thinkers within Freemasonry? And that's not the same as reflexive dialogue. That's not the same as critical thinking. It's not the same as a lot of different cognitive functions. This is just thinking about Freemasonry. Do you have to meditate to do that? No, I think it helps. I think it helps because we can give ourselves that enhanced state of consciousness where we can more clearly focus on each subject. And I think that that meditation helps us with that focus. We don't have to do that. There are other means of doing so. So what I want to leave you with this piece of it is, how can you make this yours and use it? How can you make this yours and use it in daily practice of making yourself a better Freemason? That's the key to everything that I put together and wanted to present here today. So I said we'd get to the books, and we will, just not on this presentation. Sorry. There are dozens of threads on people's favorite books and several podcasts where brothers brought their personal recommendations and lists. I loved and would call out Masonic Roundtable, Whence Came You, A Cult of Personality, Winding Stairs, so many more that actively share their own lists and personal recommendations. Author interviews, love it. I love every bit of it. I run a book club through our lodge. I get that. I'm finding many more book clubs across the country. How cool is that? We kick back at a cigar bar, discuss the book, solve world hunger, and enjoy friendly, open conversation. And it gives us even more material to think about, to consider deeply, and to use it here in this contemplative practice or deeper thinking in Masonic education or Masonic thought. I want to thank you for your time. Please feel free to contact me by social media. I'm going to end the slideshow, but I'm going to continue the discussion and ask folks to just throw out topics, and we'll see where this conversation winds on.
Great job.
Thank you very much. So we have, let me change up, stop share, Oh, there we go. Oh, Randy calls me a tease. I'm sure that was from the book comment, but the reality is, yeah, I am. I straight up, I am. It is what it is. I do have some lists of books that I really enjoyed. I've got a bit of a library behind me, as you can see, that I also enjoy, and I'm happy to share. Rachel can't actually speak over here, so I have my baby over my shoulder. Love to add that after the initiation, I felt such a profound connection to my brethren because I was completely reliant upon them and their guidance through the ritual. In the outside world, I try to remember how reliant we are upon our fellow man, so much more than we realize. It helps to shift perspective in daily interactions. Interesting. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for adding in there. I know that several of you have had some pretty interesting and pretty deep changes that happened during the entered apprentice degree and then just slightly afterwards. Anybody want to comment on that? Anybody have anything they'd like to add about the entered apprentice from that first step?
I'll try and talk and not cough a whole bunch, which right now is very difficult. When the hoodwink first went on, I talked with the stewards and they were trying to put me at ease, told a couple jokes and stuff while we were waiting. And then things got really serious when walked through the door. And, I felt myself fumble a little bit. I'm not the most I'm a little awkward. So when I got to, the center of the lodge and kneeled to pray, my thoughts were going just a million miles an hour. And on through the degree, is like, what's coming next? What's coming next? And listening to what they're saying and trying to remember it. And, and then when, you're still, they put you right down in front of the altar finally. And then, the long monologue starts, and it's just trying to drink from a fire hose. And through it all, just my thoughts are just going a million miles an hour. And it wasn't until I was put into the northeast corner that everything just started settling down. And that's how my experience went.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing that. So let me throw out the other table topic that we talked about, and that would be, how do we further use that feeling, that experience of that first step in bringing in other entered apprentices? How can we make their experience different? And I don't even want to lead there. There's maybe other ways of looking at that question that I don't even know.
I don't know how it's done in all the other lodges or anything like that, but one of the things that our worshipful does, and she really, pushes us in this direction, but before the candidates even are dressed, or as they are dressed, we have a whole separate little room where we put them. And the room is only dimly lit, and there's only a candle. And the candidates, even if we have more than one, are set in kind of different locations, so they're not together. And it's an opportunity. This is the first stage of meditation. It's the first stage that they sit there and they can start contemplating what's about to happen to them. And the goal for us is to kind of set it up as a womb, right? Because that first entry, those first steps into the lodge are about rebirth, right? That's the whole concept of this first degree. And so I think that, one of the things that I find so helpful that our worshipful does do is kind of set that preparation space up, even before the degree pieces start, even before that first step is taken into the lodge. And so it's like setting the stage.
Thanks. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
Just to go back to your question on change, I don't think I experienced as much change immediately, but I think I experienced more change in Masonry later on in life when I actually started practically applying these principles. Then I started noticing almost like a 180. I couldn't believe it. And, you start to look at the ritual and apply it instead of just trying to memorize it. Made a huge deal in my life.
Yeah, I think I'll jump on that with Ryan. I think that really ties together well what Lynn was saying, in that there's that preparation, that physical preparation outside the lodge as far as a womb, and there's also when you're after that degree. The degree is just an experience to kind of set the stage, but you're receiving those nutrients and those experiences start to add up, just like, things happen in the womb and you start to grow, and then you're prepared for that later birth that Ryan's talking about, I think.
Very cool. Very cool observations. Both of you, all three of you. This is obviously the first steps are the first steps, or the first step is the first step. Literally, that's the definition of it, and why I'm repeating it, I don't know. And we're taking that and we're expanding on it, and I really appreciate this because this is a very cool direction. Brother Parth, I see you turned your video on. Are you? Would you like to chime in for a bit? No, not able to for the moment.
Yeah, give me just 2 minutes, maybe, and you guys can chime in.
We can't hear you because of the. Yep, we'll come back. We'll come back, Parth.
Just give me about
Here we go.
5 minutes. I'm actually wrapping up at work real quick.
Okay.
Been the end of a 14-hour day, so you're gonna get you're gonna get it like it is, man. Give me about 5 minutes. I'll wrap up and I'll be on.
Understood. Understood. Anybody else like to talk?
You're right.
Okay, as Parth is wrapping up and doing his piece here, to get busy and get centered and such. One of the reasons that I picked this particular thing was to demonstrate that the ritual, that the floor work, that the footwork, that the symbols are all interconnected. Okay. There is no difference between the ritual, the floor work, the symbols, the concepts behind them, how they all fit. It's all part of one big, beautiful puzzle, one big, beautiful structure that we're building, the edifice, right? The temple that we're building within, around us, and to our outside world. And the usage of that first step is symbolic in so many different ways. And you guys have hit on just an amazing amount of things that I had never considered. This is awesome. I really appreciate the candid responses here. I'm about to say candidate responses, and I guess that fits with Entered Apprentice. One of the things that I did want to touch on, and Brother Joe pinged me about, and he's absolutely right. I went through the meditation piece rather quickly, right? I'm bringing people to a deeper, more aligned state of consciousness is you can take it as slowly as you want to or need to, and I highly recommend that. In your own practice, do that. Go as slowly as you want to or need to. For the purposes of this, I wasn't really interested in going way too deep and taking this and expanding it out to a full hour meditation. I wanted to prove that we can get to and access that consciousness without having to spend a lot of time. One of the biggest complaints that everybody has is, oh, I would do yoga, I would do meditation, I don't have time. But I just showed you could do it really quickly. Just sit down. When you take a break, make it happen that you can take a break and take a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a cup of whatever, a cigar, and hang out and think about things. You're contemplating stuff right then. You're doing the meditation right then. Are you accessing that same consciousness? I would argue yes. Are you doing it in the manner that you can think, oh, I'm accessing this state of consciousness? Well, maybe not. But it's still happening. So take that break, make that happen, make that work for you. Find a way to do this daily. Find a way to do this a couple of times a day. And that way you've got, you've got your time set aside, and you can make it a ritual, you can make it a habit, you can make it daily, you can do whatever you want to with it, right? Set your schedule. Your 24-inch gauge is your 24-inch gauge. It's yours, not mine. It doesn't help if I'm the one sitting here going, hey, use your 24-inch gauge this way. So that's about as far as I wanted to take that. But I did rush through this. The way that I do it personally, I'll share with this, is that I don't use the same script that I read from directly. I was taught a different way. The way that I was originally taught didn't focus on the connectivity of the feet and the muscles. It focused on the bones and relaxing that. And when you got to the neck and you start feeling your spine, that you connect in with the up and the down that is happening at the same time. Yes, you feel that gravity that is pushing down, but you also feel that resistance of just the bone structure that's lifting. Because anytime there's a down, there's an up. Anytime there's a in, there's an out. Anytime there's a yin, there's a yang. Black and white, tessellated. So the way that I was taught to do my progressive relaxation was more what I call, I'm stealing this from a Filipino martial art, but it's called progressive indirect relaxation. And I do start with my feet. I start with the bones and let them feel like they're more connected to the ground than the rest of my skin. And the bones of my feet are connected to the ankle. And it really is just as simple as that silly song, the ankle bone's connected to the leg bone's connected to the knee bone. But if you sing that song to yourself, as you let the bones feel heavy, and the heaviness of the bones start to feel like they're sinking through the legs, that's a game changer. And that your sitting bones, or the sits bones, S-I-T-Z is what my teacher called them. If you're letting the sits bones be connected into your seat and your spine rises out of that and everything else falls away, then it's just a different way of looking at the same thing. And when you get to the eyes, one of the things that I was taught was to soften your eyes. And if you think about softening anything, it forces the relaxation around it. So as a quick example, you just close your eyes for a moment and you're going to feel your eyelids. Now soften the eyes. And the eyelids relax, they drop away. See, it's an immediate kind of thing. So from the Chinese or the Asian Qigong point of view, it's emptiness first, not stillness. So you empty yourself and then you find the stillness and you sink, but with that with a duality, right? You're sinking and you're extending your own spine at the same time, and then you find a place of softness. And softness is a whole different animal. We can talk about softness and the different aspects of being soft for hours. So from a Chinese point of view, from my Qigong perspective, from my Kung Fu perspective, this is all the same, but it's a continuous improvement and a continuous journey. Lynn, I appreciate what you just said. Keeps recentering you all day long. And anybody want to talk about how their particular focus or their own way of taking a break or something might be different? I'm thinking more than a few of us are sitting here going, scotch and cigars. Where did this come into scotch and cigars?
And that's my happy place right there.
Yep. I know. So,
Randy,
yeah.
I think I do a little bit of meditation myself, mostly through, I've just been starting to practice Raj Yoga. I don't know, Raja Yoga. So
Okay.
my meditation starts probably mostly with breathing first, trying to relax my breathing. And then that, and then I guess kind of a little bit like what you were doing with trying to like maybe I start with the feet, working your way up as far as relaxing the body, and then just also saying like some type of words or whatever, like Om Shanti, I am a soul. That's kind of what they teach, but it's a mantra of some sort, I guess, to keep you focused. But
Very cool.
yeah,
Thank you for sharing.
no problem.
The ways that we interact with the world around us, bringing us back to that first step. How can we, and I'm just going to leave it with this, how can we be better Masons? How can we be better to ourselves, be better to our lodge, and be better to the community? And if you think about taking that first step, you may not know where you're going, but you are taking that first step of your own free will and accord. Where does that lead you? Coolness? Thank you, folks. I'm going to stop the recording now, and we'll just continue on with a little bit of conversation.